The doctor's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She wasn't watching the ultrasound monitor where my baby's heartbeat flickered like a tiny metronome in black and white. Her eyes were glued to the top of my chart, specifically to my husband's name printed there in neat block letters. Without a word, she set the probe down and hit the power button. The screen went dark mid-exam, like someone had yanked the cord out of my life. "Mrs. Mercer," she said finally, her voice a thin thread. "I need to speak with you in private. Right now." She walked me to her office, shut the door and locked it. I thought the baby was dying. My pulse hammered so hard I could hear it. My throat closed. I couldn't form a single coherent thought. I sat down, braced for every nightmare scenario pregnancy books warn you about. Instead, she said something that shattered the world I'd built in my head. "You need to leave your husband today," she whispered, "before you go home. And you need to speak to a divorce lawyer first." I actually laughed. A full startled laugh. "What? Why? We're having a baby together. We're happy. I don't understand." "That," she said, white as copy paper, "is exactly the problem. What I'm about to show you will change everything you think you know about your marriage. But to understand how I ended up in that office, for months pregnant and watching my life catch fire, you need to know what came before, the lies I didn't see, the man I thought I knew, and how it all started. My name is Daphne Wilson. I'm 32, a marketing director at a boutique firm in Connecticut, and I come from what people politely call old money. 5 years ago, my grandmother Eleanor died and left me her estate, about $2.3 million held in trust, plus the historic Wilson family home where 5 generations of women had lived, fought, forgiven, and raised their kids. I didn't make it my personality. I kept my 10-year-old Subaru, worked long hours, and got my coffee from the same cramped cafe every morning. The inheritance was a safety net, not a crown. But it made me pray. I just didn't know it yet. I met Grant Mercer 4 years ago at my family's annual charity gala. The Wilsons had hosted it for decades. That night I was hiding at the bar, trying to escape a man who'd asked about my financial situation, before I even knew his last name. Subtle. Then Grant appeared, tall, dark hair, easy grin. "What are you drinking?" he asked, ordering the same thing. He cracked a joke about the terrible jazz band. He never once mentioned money. He introduced himself as a financial advisor who'd gotten a last-minute ticket through a colleague and said he had no idea who the Wilson family was. Looking back, that should have been my first bright red flag. A financial advisor walking into a major charity event without Googling the host family. Like a chef arriving at a cooking competition saying, "Oh, we're using food?" But at the time I was exhausted by obvious gold diggers. Here was this charming man asking about my favorite authors instead of my portfolio. Felt like fresh air. We dated for a year. Grant was attentive, thoughtful, laser-focused. He remembered tiny details I'd forgotten I'd told him. He insisted on paying for dinners even though I could have bought the restaurant. He seemed real. My mother Vivian never bought it. After their first meeting, she pulled me aside in the hallway. "That man's smile doesn't reach his eyes," she said. "Something's wrong with him, Daphne. I can feel it." I told her she was being paranoid, overprotective, maybe even jealous. We fought about Grant constantly. Eventually we just stopped. For 2 years we hovered at the level of birthday texts and obligatory holiday messages. I chose my boyfriend over my mother. Spoiler, she was right. She has earned the right to say, "I told you so," until the day she dies. Grant and I married after a year of dating. We had a gorgeous ceremony at my grandmother's estate. He wept through his vows, actual tears sliding down his face as he promised to love and protect me forever. Looking back, those may have been the most honest tears he ever shed. Not from joy, from relief. The long con was paying off. After 2 years of trying to conceive naturally, we saw a fertility specialist. The diagnosis slammed into us: severe male factor infertility. Grant's sperm count was practically zero, and the few cells he did have hardly moved. Natural conception? Essentially impossible. Grant sobbed in the car for 20 minutes. He apologized over and over like he'd personally failed us. I held him, told him we'd figure it out together. That's what marriage was for. What I didn't realize was that he wasn't grieving. He was recalculating. Every tear was math. We chose IVF with ICSI, one sperm injected directly into each egg, our best medical shot. Grant insisted on researching clinics himself. He found one perfect for us. Handled every form and appointment. I thought he was being supportive. I was emotionally wrecked. Let him take this one thing, I told myself. The first cycle failed. I didn't get out of bed for 3 days. Grant held me and whispered that we'd try again. The second cycle, 7 months before that ultrasound appointment, worked. Positive test. 2 pink lines that rewrote my future. I cried from happiness. Grant wrapped his arms around me, already talking nursery colors and baby names and the family he'd always dreamed of. Casually, almost as an afterthought. He mentioned I should update my will, now that we're a family. Practical, he said. Responsible. I thought it was sweet. Meanwhile, he was already counting my grandmother's money as his. For a while life looked perfect. Loving husband. Baby on the way. The exact dream I'd had as a girl, playing with dolls in my grandmother's garden. I had no idea that in a few months a stranger with shaking hands would set documents in front of me and burn that dream to the ground. And I had no idea the arsonist was sleeping beside me. For months into the pregnancy, something in my marriage shifted. Started with little things. The kind of things you notice, then immediately explain away because the alternative hurts too much. Grant started keeping his phone face down everywhere. He changed his password and never told me the new one. He'd step outside for calls, come back with work stuff, and switch topics before I could ask. Apparently, he was restructuring client portfolios at 11 p.m. on Saturdays. As if the stock market took up night shifts. Unless he'd secretly started advising clients in Tokyo, which he hadn't. The late nights at the office multiplied. 3 times a week. Sometimes 4. He's not a trauma surgeon. What emergency could possibly require that many midnight hours? Then I found receipts. A downtown restaurant I'd never visited. 2 dinners, $280. A hotel 40 minutes from our house. Why would my husband need a hotel room practically in our backyard? He had answers for everything. Smooth, rehearsed answers, just a little too quick to be spontaneous. Client dinner. Networking. Conference that ran too late to drive home. And when I pushed, his tone changed. Daphne, you're being paranoid. It's the hormones. My mother warned me this could happen. Don't turn into one of those wives. Somehow I ended up apologizing to him. That's how good he was. Around the same time, the money talk escalated. Not obvious greed. More like weaponized practicality. We should add me to your trust just in case something happens during delivery. I need access to funds for the baby. Power of attorney is normal. Every married couple does it. Unless you don't trust me. Your grandmother's house is too big for us. We should sell it and invest properly. I know exactly where we'd get the best returns. This from a man who needed 3 streaming services because he kept forgetting which one had his shows. And I was supposed to hand him $2 million plus a historic property. When I refused, gently, never accusing, his warmth vanished. He went cold. Conversation shrank to logistics. He started sleeping at the far edge of the mattress. You move so much now that you're pregnant, he said. I'm not sleeping well. Arguments sprouted from nowhere. Every fight ended the same way. He brought up the trust, I said no. He went silent for days. His silences lasted until he got hungry. It turns out his moral outrage had a built-in timer that expired around meal times. He barely touched me anymore. He blamed my changing body, said he didn't want to hurt the baby. It sounded caring. It felt like rejection down to my bones. When I tried to talk about it, he called me needy, dramatic, hormonal. Slowly, I started wondering if the problem really was me. One night I woke at 2 a.m. to an empty space beside me. I padded out to the kitchen and found Grant hunched over his phone, voice low. It's almost time, he was saying. By spring everything will be settled. Just have to wait. He saw me and hung up instantly. Work emergency, he said. Go back to sleep, honey. I didn't ask who has work emergencies at 2 a.m. That gets settled by spring. I was too tired, too pregnant, too invested in the lie that my marriage was basically fine. The following week my best friend Tara came over for lunch. She watched me justify every odd behavior. His stress, his workload, his fear about fatherhood. I heard myself and wanted to cringe, but I kept talking. Finally, she set down her fork and gave me the look she'd been using on me since college. "Daff," she said softly, "listen to yourself. When's the last time you really talked to your mom?" I stared at my plate. "And when's the last time Grant was actually happy to see you? Not performing happy. Not for an audience. Just you walking through the door." I had no answer. "Trust your gut," Tara said. "Something's off." I told her she was being dramatic. That night I lay awake replaying every late night, every deflection, every forced smile. The way he sometimes looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching, as if I were a problem to solve, not a person he loved. For months pregnant, I went in for a routine OB appointment. My regular doctor was on vacation, so they booked me with a colleague, Dr. Claire Brennan. I went alone. Grant had a client meeting he absolutely couldn't miss. Standard stuff. I lay back, cold gel on my stomach, waiting for the familiar sight of my baby wiggling on the screen. "Dear." Brennan was warm but efficient, asking all the usual questions: how I felt, whether the baby was moving more, any nausea. Then she opened my chart. Her expression changed. Her gaze snapped to my husband's name. Back to me. Back to the name. Her hands started to tremble. She set the ultrasound probe down and flicked off the monitor. "Mrs. Mercer," she murmured, almost inaudible. "I need to speak with you privately." Every terrible possibility hit me at once. Something wrong with the heartbeat. A deformity. A stillbirth I hadn't felt. She walked me to her office, closed the door, locked it. Then she said the sentence that cracked open my entire life. "I know what your husband did," she said. "And I have proof." She pulled a folder from her desk drawer. Her fingers still shook as she opened it. "My younger sister works at your fertility clinic," she explained. 3 weeks ago she came to me in tears. She told me everything. "And when I saw your husband's name on your file just now," she took a breath. "I am so sorry. But you need to see this before you go home, before he knows that you know." She laid the folder on the desk between us. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage, this pregnancy, and the man I shared a bed with turned to ash right there. Claire's sister, Molly Brennan, is a nurse at the fertility clinic, yes, the one Grant carefully researched and insisted we use. Now I knew why he'd been so particular. 3 weeks earlier, Molly had shown up at Claire's apartment near midnight, shaking and sobbing. She hadn't been sleeping. She dropped weight. Guilt was grinding her down. 7 months before, a patient's husband had approached her at work. Charming. Well-dressed. Polite. He said he had a special situation and needed discretion. He explained that his wife didn't know, but he intended to use donor sperm for their IVF cycle because of a family genetic issue he didn't want to burden her with. Nothing sinister, he implied. Just a loving husband trying to protect his wife. He offered her $30,000. For a nurse making $52,000 a year, drowning in student loans and credit cards, it was life-changing money. Hard to say no. Molly agreed to help switch the samples. Grant's sperm, which couldn't have produced a viable pregnancy anyway, was quietly replaced with sperm from a paid donor. The embryologist was in on it as well. Grant had approached him separately with another cash offer. Between the two of them, the swap slipped through unnoticed. "The husband knows what he's doing," the embryologist told Molly. "It's not our business what arrangements couples make." But the guilt gnawed at her, especially once she saw in the charts that the cycle had worked. Somewhere, a woman was carrying a baby she believed was her husband's biological child. And it wasn't. Molly started calling in sick, panicking at work. She'd stand in front of the bathroom mirror and burst into tears. After months of this, she finally broke and told Claire everything. I sat there listening as Dr. Brennan walked me through how my husband had spent about $50,000 to frame me for future infidelity. $50,000. More than our wedding and honeymoon combined. I finally knew what he'd been willing to invest in. And there was more. Claire laid out the rest like a prosecutor outlining charges. Phase 1. Bribe the nurse and embryologist. Switch the samples. Make sure the donor sperm fertilized my eggs. Phase 2. Wait for a successful pregnancy and play the role of ecstatic father-to-be. Build the image. Phase 3. After the birth, have the embryologist alter the clinic records to show that our second IVF cycle had failed. On paper, it would look like we conceived naturally afterward. Phase 4. The trap. Once the baby was here, Grant would suggest a DNA test as something sweet and sentimental. A framed certificate of fatherhood for the nursery. Phase 5. The kill shot. When the test inevitably showed he wasn't the biological father, and the records showed we couldn't have conceived via IVF, he'd have proof I'd cheated. Our prenup had an infidelity clause, very standard in families like mine. The cheating spouse owes the other $500,000, forfeits claim to marital property, and can be sued for emotional damages. Grant's endgame. Walk away with at least $500,000, maybe more in a lawsuit. Destroy my reputation. Paint himself as the devastated victim. Count on my shame and confusion to keep me compliant. He had come so close to pulling it off. Molly had kept everything. The original sample records showing the switch, the donor's ID number, internal logs, copies of payment records tied to accounts Grant controlled. She'd even preserved emails between Grant and the embryologist, personal accounts, vague wording, but enough to connect the dots. She'd also tracked down the donor. His name was Derek Sykes, a 28-year-old grad student who'd been paid $15,000 in cash. Regular sperm donation pays maybe $100, $200 if you're lucky. $15,000 should have screamed, "This is shady." But student debt has a way of muting alarm bells. He'd been told it was a private arrangement for a couple wanting discretion. He'd had no idea it was part of a fraud. When he found out, he was furious and cooperative. Then Claire dropped the final pieces she dug up herself. Grant had roughly $180,000 in gambling debts. Years of online poker, sports betting, and business conferences that were really casino trips. All while selling himself as a steady, responsible financial advisor. And the money he'd used for the bribes, the $50,000 he'd spent corrupting my IVF cycle, he hadn't pulled that from savings. He'd embezzled it from his own clients. Little withdrawals spread over 18 months, tucked into accounting gaps the firm hadn't spotted yet. Grant hadn't just been trying to steal my inheritance. He was drowning. The people he owed money to weren't sending polite reminders. They were the kind whose collection methods don't involve paperwork. I was supposed to be his lifeline. My grandmother's money was the raft he meant to climb onto, even if he had to stand on my neck to do it. Shock hit first, numb bone-deep shock. Then denial. I reread the documents, hunting for some loophole, some misunderstanding that would make this something other than what it was. But the puzzle pieces locked into place. The late nights. The secret calls. His obsession with my trust and my grandmother's house. His carefully curated attentiveness when we'd first met. He hadn't stumbled into me at that gala. He'd researched me. The last-minute invite story was fiction. He knew exactly who I was and what I was worth before he ever said hello. Those wedding tears? Not joy. Relief. And my mother, who I'd pushed away for 2 years, who I'd accused of jealousy and paranoia, had seen it in 5 minutes. His smile doesn't reach his eyes. She tried to warn me. I'd chosen him instead. For a moment I wanted to scream. To drive straight home and throw those papers at his face. To watch him scramble. But something else settled over me instead. Cold, precise, steady. He thought I was stupid. His entire plan was built on the expectation that I would fall apart. That I'd be so humiliated when his evidence came out that I'd sign anything just to make it go away. That I'd be too broken to fight. He'd mistaken kindness for weakness. Love for gullibility. He had no idea who he'd married. He doesn't know I know, I said to Claire. She shook her head. No. Molly hasn't told anyone at the clinic. I only put it together when I saw your file. Good. I gathered the documents carefully. I need copies of everything. And I need to speak with Molly. Directly. Claire hesitated. What are you going to do? I stood, one hand instinctively covering my belly. The baby shifted, tiny, unaware, completely innocent. Whoever their biological father was, this child had not chosen any of it. My husband thinks he's been playing chess, I said. He thinks he's 3 moves ahead. I met Claire's eyes. He's about to find out I already flipped the board. I drove home from that appointment with my face smooth. My breaths measured, my hands steady. 2 years earlier, Grant had installed security cameras around the house. For safety, he'd said. Suddenly I wondered if they were for surveillance. If he watched footage when I wasn't home, studying my expressions, checking for suspicion. So I gave him nothing. He was waiting in the kitchen, wearing that practiced smile my mother had immediately distrusted. "How'd it go?" he asked. "Baby okay?" I smiled back, stepped into his arms, and handed him the ultrasound printout Claire had done before she saw his name. "Perfect," I said lightly. "Everything's absolutely perfect. I deserved an award for that scene." Over dinner, I laughed at his weak jokes and imagined him in an orange jumpsuit. I asked about his day and mentally estimated how high his bail might be. I apologized for being paranoid lately. Blamed hormones, the exact line he'd been using on me for months. His shoulders loosened. His whole body relaxed. He thought the game was still his. That night, he slept like a baby beside me. I stared at the ceiling until 3 in the morning, building the blueprint of his downfall. The next day I called in sick and drove 2 hours to another city, checking my rearview mirror every few miles. Paranoid? Maybe. Earning it? Definitely. I met with a private investigator named Rosalind Weaver. Former cop, 15 years on the force. Short hair, sharper eyes. Cardigan over a frame that looked like it could still knock down a door. I told her everything. She listened, expression unreadable, pen moving steadily across a legal pad. When I finished, she gave a thin, sharp smile. "Your husband's arrogant," she said. "Arrogant men are sloppy. Give me 2 weeks." It took her 10 days. Grant's gambling debt. About $180,000, just as Claire had said. Online betting sites. Underground poker games. Private lenders whose names never appear on bank statements. The embezzlement. Roughly $53,000 missing from client accounts at his firm, siphoned off in small amounts over 18 months. And then the affair. 8 months. His assistant. Downtown restaurants, hotel rooms, weekend conferences. Rosalind had photos, text messages, receipts. Enough to wallpaper a courtroom. Of course it was his assistant. The oldest cliché in the book. If there were a cheating husband handbook, Chapter 1 would be, "Sleep with your assistant." Grant would have underlined it. Rosalind uncovered something else too. This wasn't his first run at a wealthy woman. 5 years ago in Boston, he dated a woman named Caroline Ashford. Trust fund, family wealth, the whole package. After 8 months, she discovered irregularities in a joint account he'd convinced her to open. She dumped him immediately but was too humiliated to pursue legal action. Rosalind tracked her down. Caroline was more than ready to talk now. I met Molly at a coffee shop an hour away where no one knew either of us. She looked wrecked, thin, pale, dark circles under her eyes. She burst into tears as soon as I sat down. "I'm so sorry," she kept saying. "I knew it was wrong, I did, but the money," and he sounded so sincere. "And I thought maybe he really was protecting you from some genetic issue." I held up a hand. "I need to know one thing. Are you willing to testify? On the record?" She nodded instantly. "Yes. I'll tell them everything. I should have gone to the police immediately. I was terrified. Of losing my license, my job, everything. But I'll say whatever I have to. Under oath." I studied her. This woman had taken $30,000 to help my husband sabotage my life. She was complicit. But the power dynamic was painfully familiar. He'd found her soft spot and pushed. He was the architect. She was a tool. "Don't be scared anymore," I said quietly. "You're not the villain here. He is." Once the embryologist learned Molly had kept records and was cooperating, he developed a moral compass overnight. He agreed to testify in exchange for reduced charges. The hardest call I made was to my mother. 2 years of distance. 2 years of choosing him over her. Of defending him when she questioned his motives. Of cutting her out of holidays because she made things tense. The phone rang twice. Daphne. Her voice was cautious and hopeful at once, like she'd been waiting for this call and was afraid to breathe too hard. "Mom." My throat tightened. "You were right. About him. About everything. And I'm so sorry." There was a pause. I braced for the righteous anger she absolutely deserved. Instead, she said, What do you need, sweetheart? No gloating. No litany of all the times she'd warned me. Just that. That, more than anything else, broke me. My mother is a retired estate attorney with 3 decades of experience. Within 48 hours, she connected me with one of the best divorce lawyers in Connecticut and a prosecutor who specialized in financial crimes. That day, she taught me something I should have known all along. People who really love you don't need to be right. They need you to be safe. I had spent 2 years choosing a con man over the woman who raised me. Her first instinct was still to protect me. Grant will never understand that kind of love. He's never felt it. My divorce attorney was a woman named Sandra Kowalski, 5'2", silver hair, soft cardigans. She looked like she should be handing out cookies, not legal threats. Underneath that grandmother exterior was steel. She reviewed everything. The clinic records, Molly's and the embryologist's statements, Rosalind's findings, the affair evidence, the embezzlement trail. When she finished, she peered at me over her glasses and smiled. "Your husband is in very serious trouble," she said. "Fraud, conspiracy, embezzlement. The prenup's infidelity clause is about to flip on him, not you. And that plan to falsify medical records? We have intent on paper. That's another felony." She coordinated with the prosecutor. Molly gave a sworn statement. The embryologist cooperated. Grant's firm was quietly tipped off about the missing funds. They froze his access and launched their own investigation. A judge reviewed the evidence and signed an arrest warrant. 8.5 by 11 inches of pure blessed karma. 6 weeks after my appointment with Claire, I suggested to Grant that we throw a baby moon party at my grandmother's estate. Both families. Close friends. A spring garden gathering to celebrate the baby. His eyes lit up. More witnesses for his devoted husband act. More people to sympathize when he eventually painted himself as the wrong spouse. "That's a wonderful idea," he said, kissing my forehead. "Let me help with the planning." No, I said, patting his chest. "You're working so hard. All those late nights. Let me handle it. You just show up and enjoy yourself." He had no idea what handling it meant. It meant police officers waiting quietly in the guest house. My lawyer near the bar. Derek Sykes on standby. Every document in labeled folders. His own parents about to be introduced to the real him. The party was on a Saturday. That morning I watched him in the bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie and practicing expressions, testing out his overwhelmed with emotion smile, rehearsing for a play he believed he'd already written the ending to. The man I'd shared a bed with for 3 years thought he was walking toward his masterpiece. He was walking into his own execution. The Wilson estate in late spring is something out of a painting. My grandmother's gardens were in full bloom, roses, hydrangeas, lavender, all layered over 50 years of care. White tints on the lawn, champagne sweating in silver buckets, flowers on every table, a string quartet near the rose bushes, playing the kind of music that makes people whisper more quietly. About 50 guests drifted around in their nice clothes, family, friends, colleagues. Grant's parents had driven up from Maryland, glowing with pride over their successful son and his pregnant wife. My grandmother would have adored the party. She also would have pegged Grant in under a minute. Older women have a sixth sense for frauds the rest of us only develop by bleeding. Grant was in his glory, moving through the crowd like a politician. Handshakes. Laughter. That smooth charm he could switch on like a light. Every time someone took a picture, his hand found its way to my belly. The devoted father-to-be, eyes soft, smile tender. He was incredibly good at impersonating a human. For 3 full seconds I almost felt sorry for him. Then I remembered the $50,000 he'd spent trying to annihilate me, and the feeling evaporated. His mother kept dabbing at her eyes. "I always knew he'd be a wonderful father," she kept telling people. "Such a good boy." His father strutted around like a proud rooster, shaking hands and talking about the next generation of Mercers. My mother stood near the dessert table, watching Grant with the patient focus of a cat watching a mouse that doesn't know it's in a trap. When our eyes met, she lifted her champagne glass slightly. Almost showtime. Around 3 o'clock, Grant did exactly what I thought he would. He'd been hinting for weeks about how romantic it would be to get a DNA test to display in the nursery, proof of his bond with the baby. At the party he went for it. He pulled me close, arms snug around my waist, making sure we had an audience. "You know what we should do?" he said, voice just loud enough to carry. "Let's get one of those DNA kits. Frame the results. Proof that daddy and baby are connected forever. Wouldn't that be special?" Guests made soft noises. Someone said how lucky I was. Another woman murmured that she wished her husband was that thoughtful. I put on my best shy wife act. "I don't know, that sounds like a lot of trouble." "Come on," he coaxed. "We could even open the results right here. Make it part of the celebration. What do you all think?" More approving sounds. Smiles. Nods. "Well," I said, looking around, "if everyone thinks it's a good idea." Grant practically glowed. This was the moment he'd engineered. Right crowd, right emotions, perfect stage for his tragic husband performance later. He just didn't realize whose script we were following. Instead of pulling a DNA kit from my purse, I walked toward a small platform we'd set up near the fountain for toasts. I picked up the microphone. Grant beamed up at me from the crowd, champagne in hand, already rehearsing his shocked, shattered expression for later. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice carrying easily over the garden. "Today is meant to be about celebration, about family, about truth." I found Grant's eyes. My husband said he wanted to reveal something special today. So I'm going to help him do exactly that. His smile faltered, just a flicker barely there. The first crack. I reached under the podium and pulled out a folder. 3 months ago, I continued, I learned something about my husband that changed everything I thought I knew about my marriage. And because Grant is right, this should be about truth. I'm going to share it with all of you. His champagne glass stalled halfway to his lips. "Grant and I struggled with infertility," I said calmly. "His diagnosis meant natural conception was impossible. So we did IVF at a clinic he chose." I held up the first set of papers. "These are the original records from that clinic. The ones before anyone had a chance to alter them." I let that word hang, original. Color drained from his face. "These records show that my husband bribed 2 clinic employees to switch his sperm sample with donor sperm. He paid a nurse $30,000. He paid the embryologist. And he paid $15,000 to a young man named Derek Sykes." I gestured to the edge of the crowd. Derek stepped forward, looking nervous but resolute. "To provide the sperm used to conceive my child. Without my knowledge. Without my consent." Gasps rolled through the guests. Someone dropped a glass. It shattered on the stone. "My husband's plan was straightforward," I went on. "Wait for our baby to be born. Demand a DNA test he already knew he would fail. Our prenup contains an infidelity clause. With the test results and falsified clinic records, he could claim I cheated, collect $500,000, sue for more, and walk away with everything my grandmother ever left me." Grant finally found his voice. "Daff, honey, this is insane. You're confused. It's the pregnancy, the hormones, I'm not finished." My tone was ice. Silence fell over the lawn. "In addition to bribing the fertility clinic," I said, "my husband embezzled roughly $50,000 from his clients to fund this scheme." I looked toward the bar where Grant's boss stood, invited quietly by my lawyer. His expression hardened as I spoke. "His firm is now aware and investigating." I turned back to the crowd. "He also has about $180,000 in gambling debts. The kind you don't owe to banks." I pulled out a set of photos, nothing explicit, just incriminating enough. "And for the past 8 months, he's been having an affair with his assistant." Grant's mother made a small wounded animal sound. I held the photos where people could see. Him and his assistant at dinner, entering hotels, leaving together in the mornings. "This isn't even his first attempt," I added. 5 years ago in Boston, he targeted another woman with family money. She ended things when she discovered financial discrepancies. She's given a statement to investigators and is ready to testify. Grant's glass slipped from his fingers and exploded on the patio, champagne splashing his shoes. This is all lies," he stammered. "She's making it up. She's mentally unstable. The pregnancy. Grant." His mother's voice cut across his babbling, quiet but razor sharp. "Is any of this true?" He turned to her, mouth opening and closing. Nothing came out. Molly stepped forward from near the guest house, pale but steady. "I'm the nurse he bribed," she said. "I have documentation of everything. I've already given a statement to the police." Derek spoke up next. "He paid me 15 grand in cash. Told me it was a private arrangement for a couple who wanted discretion. I had no idea I was helping commit fraud." Grant spun in circles, eyes darting from face to face. People he'd spent years charming now stared at him like he was something ugly stuck to their shoes. Then the police stepped up onto the lawn. "Grant Mercer." The officer's voice was flat, professional. "You're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and embezzlement. You have the right to remain silent." They cuffed him in front of everyone. His mother sobbed. His father stared at the ground, jaw clenched. As they led him toward the patrol car, Grant twisted back toward me, desperate. "Daphne, please. We can fix this. I screwed up, but I love you. Think about our baby. Our family. Don't do this." I looked at the man I'd married. The man I'd defended against my own mother. The man who'd stood in front of our families and sworn to protect me while planning to gut my life. "You're right, Grant," I said calmly. "We just did fix it." They put him in the back of the car and drove him down the long gravel driveway, past my grandmother's gardens, through the iron gates he'd been so eager to own. 50 guests stood frozen. My mother came to my side and slipped an arm around my shoulders. "I am so proud of you," she said softly. "Your grandmother would be too." For the first time in months I felt like I could breathe. Grant was denied bail. The judge called him a flight risk. The gambling creditors he'd been stringing along suddenly lost patience once his arrest hit the news. Turns out people who lend money off the books don't love hearing that their cash is now evidence. His affair partner resigned from his firm the next morning. No farewell party. No box of desk trinkets. Just an email and a ghosting. I've seen rats leave sinking ships with more loyalty, and they at least glance back. His firm finished their internal investigation within 2 weeks. They confirmed about $53,000 missing from client accounts and filed their own charges. When Caroline Ashford in Boston heard about his arrest, she came forward publicly. 5 years of silent shame vanished in an instant. Her testimony helped round out the picture prosecutors were painting. The divorce moved quickly. His lawyer tried to bargain, but he had nothing to bargain with. The prenup's infidelity clause, the weapon he'd intended to use on me, now worked in my favor. He was the cheater. On paper. In photos. In texts. He owed me. Not that there was anything left for him to give. Every bit of wealth he'd flaunted turned out to be borrowed, stolen, or imaginary. The criminal case rolled forward. Molly testified. The embryologist cooperated in exchange for a lighter sentence. Derek gave his statement. The paper trail Grant had once been so proud of hiding unraveled easily under scrutiny. Fraud. Conspiracy. Embezzlement. Charge after charge stuck. His parents came to court the first week. After that, only his mother's lawyer appeared, to manage whatever was left of their financial exposure. His father released a statement about choices no parent can defend. His mother checked into a facility for exhaustion, which is what wealthy people call it when reality becomes unbearable. Grant Mercer, who had slipped so neatly into my life 4 years earlier, will be spending the next several years in prison. When he gets out, he'll have no money, no career, and a Google trail that warns off any future targets. The trap he built so patiently finally snapped shut on his own neck. My baby was born 4 months after the party. Healthy. Perfect. Completely untouched by the ugliness that preceded their arrival. People asked if I'd reach out to Derek. Involve him somehow. I thought about it. In the end I decided no. Derek was a grad student who'd made a desperate choice for money. He wasn't ready for fatherhood and didn't want it. I didn't need him to be anything more than what he already was. A reluctant footnote in a story he never meant to join. My child would have me. My mother firmly back in my life. The extended Wilson family. The house my grandmother filled with love and stubbornness. The garden she planted with her own hands. That was a better inheritance than any DNA match. Somewhere along the way I learned what family really is. It isn't blood. It isn't genetics. It isn't a name on a certificate. Family is who shows up. Who stays. Who chooses you every single day. especially when it's hard. My mother chose me when I absolutely didn't deserve it. I chose my baby when everything about their origins was twisted by someone else's greed. That's family. Mom and I have lunch every week now, patching over 2 lost years one plate at a time. She still hasn't said, "I told you so." Eventually I asked her why. She set down her coffee, eyes warm. "Because," she said, "watching you take that man down was more satisfying than any 4 words could ever be." I laughed. A real laugh this time, not the brittle kind I'd been faking for months. 3 weeks after the party, early one morning, I stood in my grandmother's kitchen, the same sunlit room that had watched 4 generations of Wilson women brew tea and make decisions. My kitchen now. I made chamomile using her old recipe, her preferred brand. Some rituals are worth keeping exactly as they are. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from my mother. "Lunch tomorrow?" I smiled and typed back. "Always." Outside, the gardens were in full bloom. The roses my grandmother had planted as a young bride. The hydrangeas she added when my mother was born. The lavender border I'd helped her put in when I was 10. My small hands patting dirt around each seedling, while she told me stories about the women who came before us. I rested my palm on my stomach, running on habit more than need. No baby there now, just the phantom memory of kicks. In the nursery down the hall, my child slept, oblivious to the war that had been fought to protect the life they were born into. Grant had tried to strip everything from me. My money, my good name, my future, my peace. All he really did was force me to see how strong I'd been all along. Some people spend their whole lives waiting for karma. I got to deliver mine in person. With documentation. In front of 50 witnesses. My grandmother used to say, "Wilson women don't break. We bend. We adapt. We survive. And when someone tries to burn us down, we rise from the ashes and build something better." Grant thought he'd married an easy mark. He married a Wilson. And now he has years in a prison cell to think about that mistake.